3 words, 8 letters. And for some people, the absence of them has quietly shaped every relationship, every decision, every moment of self-doubt they have ever experienced as an adult. If nobody said those words to you growing up, you already know what I mean. And if you're still not sure whether that applies to you, stay here, because this might be the most important thing you hear today. Picture a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old. They did something today, something they were proud of. Maybe they got a good grade. Maybe they helped someone. Maybe they just tried really hard at something that was difficult for them. They come home carrying that quiet hope that children carry, the hope that someone will notice, that someone will look at them and reflect back something warm. And the parent is there, physically present. Maybe they nod. Maybe they say something practical, like good job, or make sure you do your homework. Maybe they say nothing at all and just go back to whatever they were doing. The child learns to put the hope away. They do this enough times that eventually they stop bringing it out at all. And by the time that child becomes an adult, they have become so practiced at not needing that particular thing that they genuinely believe they don't need it anymore. They are wrong, but they won't know that for a long time. Here is something important to understand before anything else. Most parents who never said "I love you" were not cruel people. They were not indifferent to their children in the way a stranger would be indifferent. Many of them worked hard. Many of them sacrificed. Many of them showed up in every practical sense of the word. They just came from places where the words were never said to them either. Love, in those households, was expressed through action, through food on the table, through showing up, through not leaving. It was assumed, not spoken. And the parents who lived this way often genuinely believed their children knew, that it went without saying. But here is what the child experienced. A child does not interpret love the way an adult does. A child cannot read between the lines with the same sophistication. A child needs the explicit, the direct, the verbal confirmation that they are loved not for what they do, not for how useful they are, not because they belong to someone biologically, but simply because they exist, and their existence is precious to the person in front of them. When that confirmation never comes, the child's developing mind does what all developing minds do when they encounter something they cannot explain. It explains it anyway. And the explanation it reaches for is the most available one. Maybe I'm not enough to say it about. That thought, in one form or another, becomes a kind of operating system. It runs quietly beneath everything, beneath the accomplishments and the competence and the friendships and the relationships. It is not always conscious. In fact, most of the time it isn't. But it shapes behavior in ways that are remarkably consistent across people who share this experience. Watch for these patterns. The person who works twice as hard as everyone around them, not because they are more ambitious, but because deep down they are still trying to earn a verdict that was never delivered, still trying to become undeniable, still trying to make the love obvious enough that it has to be said. The person who finds it almost physically uncomfortable to receive a compliment, who deflects, minimizes, changes the subject, because being seen warmly feels foreign, and foreign things feel unsafe. The person who loves deeply in their relationships but holds something back, always, a small but crucial reservation, a readiness to be left, because something in them learned very early that love is a thing that exists, but doesn't necessarily get expressed. And if it doesn't get expressed, you can never really be sure it's there. The person who says "I love you" to others easily, sometimes too easily, sometimes in ways that are less about the other person and more about creating the exchange they never had. Saying it first, saying it often, waiting for it to come back and feeling the particular terror of the pause before it does. These are not personality types. They are adaptations. They are the shapes that a child's unmet need takes when it has to live inside an adult's life. Pause here. Think about the last time someone told you they loved you, and you actually believed it. Not just heard it, believed it. Let it land somewhere real inside you. For some people, that moment comes easily. For others, this question surfaces a kind of quiet grief, because the honest answer is that they are not sure they have ever fully let it in. That somewhere between hearing the words and allowing them to matter, there is a wall. Old and invisible and very, very strong. That wall was not built out of stubbornness. It was built out of protection. If you don't let love fully in, you can't be fully devastated when it goes. That is not cynicism. That is a child's logic, preserved perfectly in an adult's nervous system, still doing its job long after the original danger has passed. There is a concept in psychology called the internal working model. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. From the time we are very young, we build a mental model of how relationships work, based not on what we are taught in the classroom, but on what we experience in our earliest, closest relationships. What we learn from those first people who were supposed to love us becomes the template we carry into every relationship that follows. If the template says, "Love is present but unspoken," you will find relationships where love is assumed but not expressed, and feel strangely comfortable in them, even if they leave you lonely. If the template says love has to be earned, you will work for love in ways that exhaust you, and you will distrust love that arrives without conditions, because it doesn't match what love is supposed to feel like. If the template says love is fragile and unreliable, you will brace for loss even inside security. You will find reasons to doubt, not because you want to, but because your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do. The template is not your fault, but understanding it is your responsibility and your possibility. Here is the twist, and this one matters. The absence of "I love you" in childhood does not mean love was absent. For many people who grew up in this kind of environment, looking back as adults, they can see the love in the way a parent worked overtime without complaining, in the way they came to every game, even exhausted, in the way they held things together during impossible times, in the way they never left. The love was there. It just never found its way into language. And here is why that distinction matters so much. Because if the love was there but unspoken, then the conclusion the child reached, that they were not enough to say it about, was never true. It was never about the child at all. It was about the parents' own limitations, their own wounds, their own template, inherited from the people who raised them. You were not unlovable. You were with someone who did not know how to say it. That is a painful distinction, because it means there is grief to do. Grief for the words that should have been said. Grief for the child who waited. Grief for the years spent operating under a conclusion that was never accurate. But it is also a liberating distinction, because it means the story you have been telling yourself about your own worth is not the truth. It is a misunderstanding that has been running your life. Take a moment with that. If the love was real but the words were missing, then the question is not whether you were lovable. You were. The question is, what do you do now with the part of you that still doesn't believe it? Because that part exists. For almost everyone who grew up without those words, it exists. A small, quiet, very old part that is still waiting, still hoping, still scanning every room for someone who will finally say it clearly and mean it absolutely, and not take it back. That part deserves compassion. Not therapy speak compassion, real compassion. The kind you would feel for a child still waiting at a door that was never going to open the way they needed it to. Because that is what it is. And here is where this ends. Not with a prescription, not with a list of steps, with something simpler and more difficult than either of those things. The words "I love you," when they are genuine, are not just an expression of feeling. They are an act of courage. They are one person saying to another, "You matter enough to me that I am willing to be specific about it. Willing to be clear. Willing to make myself vulnerable enough to name it." The people who never received that were not denied love in most cases. They were denied the courage it takes to speak it. And many of them grew up and became the most quietly loving people in any room. The ones who notice when someone is struggling. The ones who remember the small things. The ones who show up without being asked. Because they know, in a way that people who were freely told it cannot fully understand, what it costs to go without it. They became fluent in every language of love except the one they needed most to receive. So if this is you, hear this now. Not as a script, not as content, as something meant for the specific, particular, irreplaceable person you are. You were worth saying it to. You have always been worth saying it to. And if no one said it clearly enough, or early enough, or often enough, let this be the beginning of you learning to say it to yourself. Not as a replacement for what was missing, but as the first step in no longer organizing your entire life around a wound that was never yours to carry.